Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and it's that time of the year. We are wrapping up. It is end of season reviews on our sleds, and for today's video I wanted to focus in on my 25 Backcountry XRS 850 Turbo. This thing is an absolute monster, so I'm going to go from start to finish, give you guys my full review and download on what I experienced with the sled this season. Let's get into it. Sledaddicz is brought to you by Team Vincent Motorsports, Bergstrom Carbides, Ledger Performance, Ultimax Belts, Stud Boy Studs, and Radio World. All right, first things first, the Backcountry, new for this year with the XRS 850 Turbo is this RX front end. So they went from a 39-inch front end to a 43-inch wide front end, made an absolute massive difference with this sled on the trail. This is like a normal trail sled now, and it was one of the things I know that Luke from Snow Tracks and you know, those guys were talking about for years. They were hoping that Skidoo would actually bring this out in a 43-inch wide front end. Previous model backcountries that I was into was the 39-inch wide front ends, and I was okay with them, but they certainly were a little squirrely. This thing, as far as trail manners, it's absolutely stuck and glued to the trail, just like a normal trail sled. And I was really impressed with obviously, you know, that changed this year, and it made a huge difference considering, you know, 60-75% of my riding with the sled was actually on trail, and handled beautifully. Now, one thing is they also changed the ski design this year with the RX skis, and what I'm not 100% certain on is, you know, how much is it as far as the front end geometry of the sled versus the skis. I personally feel like the majority of the difference in handling in the sled is actually coming from the skis. I think the new double step sort of keel design that they've got, it's a really aggressive keel design on these skis and handles really well, especially in loose snow. I did find it was a little more aggressive than I would have liked with some heavier steering when you get into fresh hard packs. So get up in the morning, it's a -25 morning, they just groom the trails, set up hard overnight, and you will certainly find this thing is a little bit harder to steer for sure. You'll feel that heavy steering, you might be fighting it a bit. One of the things I did find also was I run them with the stock carbides first, and they are darty, especially in fresh hard packs. So I swapped those out immediately. I put on the Bergstrom 6-inch triple points. They work fantastic, got rid of the darting, and the sled handled on rails. So really impressed, and I really love the fact that now we've got the options to get you know, that narrower front end or the wide front end. Now, when it comes to backcountry riding in the deeper snow, it's funny, I swapped back and forth just yesterday between this one and an older G4 39-inch wide. And when you get into deep snow, this is a little harder to get up on the side. It's a little bit harder to sort of maneuver around in the deeper snow compared to a 39-inch front end. And I was actually kind of surprised. Anybody who's a really good rider, though, probably won't notice that much of a difference. But, you know, I'm still getting better and better at backcountry riding every year. I personally noticed it, and you can still do all your carving and all that. It's just going to be a little bit more work to get that done versus the narrower front end. So it's something to think about, and again, it really comes down to how much riding you're going to be doing on trail versus off trail. But overall, this is the way to go for me, and you know, for the backcountry this year, I think Skidoo has just done a bang-up job in terms of coming out with this this wide front end, and honestly, it works awesome. All right, so the 850 Turbo, that's a new engine for me too. I have not played around with the 850 two-stroke turbos at all until this sled this year. Phenomenal motor, absolutely love the power. You will absolutely notice the difference. You know, we swap back and forth all season between regular 850s and 850 turbos, and everybody asks us, you know, is the turbo worth it? 100% worth it. It absolutely rips. It's got great bottom and mid-range power is really where you're going to notice it. The throttle response is amazing, and you know, they just work. They seem to work really well, and I had great luck this year as far as you know, running the 850 turbo. I've heard some guys have had issues with them, but you know, me and Jesse ran them all year, and we really honestly had no issues with the engines at all. The one thing you do need to make sure of is you warm them up. They will go into limp mode, so make sure it gets up to 19 degrees before you even touch the throttle. Otherwise, you're going to notice it right away. Great motor, tons of power, very responsive. I love it. Again, kind of going over the knolls and stuff, it gets really good hookup and really good power. You can get the front end up a lot better with the turbo model because it's got more power versus the non-turbo model. So I like that, both again for on trail, getting up over those crests in the hills, but also in deep snow, you want to get that front end up. It's got the jam to get up and get out. And yesterday I also got stuck in about 4.5 feet of snow. I kind of buried it, and then what I did was I just jumped on it, pinned the throttle, jiggled it a little bit, and it literally just popped right out of the snow. So I find that having the extra power certainly makes a difference. And you know, they claim it's around 180 horsepower, and I think honestly it's a massive difference between a regular 850 and the turbo. And if you have the opportunity, definitely try the turbo. It's great. You know, one of the concerns was obviously, you know, how much ice are they using? And we found that at the beginning when we were breaking them in, they were certainly using a lot of ice, but it was also really mild when we were getting these things broken in up here in Cochrane at the beginning of the season in December. You know, throughout the year, I found that it actually, after break-in, it started to use less ice. But a big difference with it is, you know, how hard you are on the gas. As soon as you get to wide open throttle shots with these things, they like to drink fuel, they like to drink oil, and they absolutely like to drink your ice as well. At the beginning, I think we saw, you know, we get through one tank up here in Cochrane running, you know, pretty hard, probably, you know, 150K to a tank of ice. And then, you know, riding down to Muskoka area a couple weekends ago, you know, we ran a full tank of ice, and that got us through like 600K that weekend. And again, it's just because the trails are different down there. You're not riding as hard on the throttle, and it certainly seems to last a lot longer. You know, is there that much difference when you're actually out of ice? I think that's the beauty of the system, is that you really still have that power, but if you're honking on it for, let's say, you know, 20, 30 seconds, it will pull timing, and you will notice that you're going to lose about 10 to 15 kilometers an hour on the top end. But again, that's going to be pretty rare. So I think Skidoo, as far as like the system and how it works with the methanol injection, it's really smart. Really intelligent system, and remember, you're always going to have that power of the turbo unless you're doing those really long pulls. So overall, absolutely love the 850 turbo. I think it's a winner, and again, just can't go back to a regular 850 after you've had a turbo. All right, so out back we've got the 146 Storm track, which was a new track for me to try this year, and that's a 1.5-inch lug up the middle, 1.25-inch lugs on the outside. Awesome trail track, but obviously it does really well in the deeper snow and the looser snow as well. So riding off trail with it, had no issues. Decided to stud it. We got some nice 1.625 stud boy studs, the PowerPoint studs in it this year with the double backers, those super pro light backers that we like to use. And honestly, it hooks up awesome on trail. The one thing that I do love about a 146 versus a 137, and you guys have probably seen over the years that I've sort of made that move to running 146s, is they don't really spin like the 137s do. I find you get really good hookup with the 146-inch track. So whole shots on this thing, that's what it's all about. I'm not a top speed guy. I like sleds that really get up and go right off the start, and that's why, again, I really love a 146 platform, just because you get a little bit more track. And obviously on trail, you're going to get those hookups, but off trail, you're going to get the flotation as well. And it's going to keep you up floating on the snow, which really is nice. And you do notice it again. I was out riding this past week with a bunch of guys with 137s, and you know, I can stop, float right on top of the snow, and sometimes when they get going, they're going to start to trench right away, whereas I can just take off. And that's really, I think, the big difference between running a 146-inch versus a 137. And on trail, honestly, you're not going to notice that much difference. They handle great on trail as well. And, you know, not going to be, for me, the added track length is worth it. And again, I'm absolutely sold on the backcountries. I've been running them now for multiple years. And I think it's just a great Swiss Army knife of all sleds. So up front, I was running the different shocks this year. I just kind of wanted to play around with the front end a little bit. And I actually ran Pro 46s on the front for the majority of the year. Just this last week, I went back to the Pro 36s. So, you know, everybody's going to ask, are you going to notice that much difference? I honestly think there is a difference for sure. Once you get those Pro 46s dialed in, it's a really soft kind of plush feeling. And when you come down off of a little jump or something like that, you really do notice it. I think for 90% of the people out there, you know, you're fine. Pro 36s are a great shock. You got a simple 3-setting adjustment versus all the complexity that you're going to get with a shock like a Pro 46, where you're adjusting, you know, high speed and low speed compression as well as rebound. And it does take a while to get them dialed in, but once they're dialed, they work awesome. And you can actually look at them and see the shock body on the Pro 46s, how thick it is in comparison to the 36s. But honestly, the 36 across the whole back of the suspension too does really well over the bumps. The C-Motion X works excellent. Is it an R-Motion ride? Probably not as good as R-Motion, but it's awesome. They work great. And plus, again, I think with the 146, you're going to be bridging those bumps a little bit better than a shorter track. So anytime you get into those kind of small whipped out stuttery sections, you fly across them. And I think there's kind of like a balance or like an offset between the two. So I really like the way the C-Motion X handles even on the bumps. And again, the Pro 36 suspension works really well. I like the ease kind of adjustability of it with the 3-click settings, and just found it worked awesome on this this backcountry this year. So the other thing too with your 146s, these backcountries actually come with front mounted rail scratchers, which I love. Skidoo started doing that last year on the backcountry models, and you will find that the sled does heat up a little bit more than a traditional 137. Now, I ran my scratchers and typically do run the scratchers down all the time. Doesn't really matter. And that really keeps my temps around 42, 45, maybe 47 at the most. And in low snow conditions or running down sides of roads, you're definitely going to notice it come up a little bit more. You're going to be around probably 55 degrees, 60, I think, at probably the worst case scenario. And then again, sometimes on that hard packed trail where you're getting out first thing in the morning and it's, you know, like concrete, those scratchers got to be down, and you want to make sure that you're getting snow up into the tunnel just to keep the engine temps down. That's really one of the bigger things that you're going to notice between going with like a regular traditional 137 trail sled versus riding a 146 on the trail. And again, it's only going to be in those types of conditions, but it's again a great thing that they send these sleds out the door. You know, they come with the scratchers on them, and you'll definitely want to make sure it's a great option for these things, but you're definitely going to want to make sure that you run those scratchers pretty regularly just to keep those temps down. So these sleds, also new for us was the shot start, and an awesome option once we kind of understood how it worked a little bit. You fire it up, you pull it in the morning, and then, you know, pretty much will run the rest of the day. Super easy, pretty cool, like that you don't have actually a starter engaging to actually turn the motor over. It just ignites. And it's a pretty neat system, and obviously the beauty there is you're saving about 20 pounds of weight between your battery and your starter. So really huge fan of the shot start. It's the first sled I've ever had with it, and I think it works awesome. You know, the one downside, honestly, is you're gonna wake up on those minus 25 mornings. It's gonna be super cold, and you gotta pull this sucker over. And you know, I had a couple mornings where, you know, I was cranking on it with 2 arms, and it's hard to pull over a big board, you know, 2-stroke. It takes some effort. But again, you know, I'd pull it just a little bit just to kind of loosen everything up, and then give it a good crank, and it fires up. So that's kind of the only thing. Some people might have an issue with it. I didn't. I thought it was okay once you get used to it. But those first, you know, cold starts in the morning on those really cold days, you know, they are definitely a little bit of a bear to pull over. All right, guys, well, that takes care of my end of season review on the 2025 Skidoo Backcountry XRS Turbo 850. What an awesome sled. If you guys have any questions at all just around the 146s or these turbos, or specifically anything related to the backcountry sleds, definitely give me a shout. But I hope that was informative for you and hopefully gives you a little bit more info about these sleds. It's definitely my favorite two-stroke for sure. I'm a huge, believer that I think the 146 backcountries are just a great kind of do-it-all kind of sled, and absolutely love these things. And Skidoo made it even better this year. It's definitely the best it's ever been. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll see you on the next one.